This episode of Head Game was recorded on Gadigal land. This episode contains discussion of suicide, eating disorders, and mental ill health. If this raises any issues for you, support is available through the links and phone numbers in the show notes.
It's 2016 and Louise Hawkins has just stepped into a gym for the first time in decades. She signed up for a kettlebell class, determined to turn her life around after years sheltered away at home, living with anxiety. Born missing part of her left arm, she's determined to face her fears after trying to hide her physical disability from the world. It's a class that sparks a love of fitness that will see Louise blossom for years to come. Kettlebells turns into CrossFit, which motivates her to develop an adaptive aid for athletes with disabilities. For a woman who once believed she wouldn't be remembered for anything, she would go on to inspire a generation of athletes. I'm Matt Middleton, and this is Head Game. Today, a woman, a mother, and an athlete who will be remembered thanks to her fitness journey and a nudge from yours truly. If you look at this phenomenal woman on Instagram, on her social medias, you will see this strong lady, CrossFitter, powerhouse, confident lady that's absolutely smashing through life. But it's not always been like that, has it, Louise?
It's not, no. That's a very recent shift for me in terms of I started CrossFit in 2017 and I was still very much in a poor mindset. And I would only say it's been the last 18 months that I've really come to, if you like.
The last 18 months, you've absolutely smashed life. It's almost as if, you've been building it up for something to click in your head. And then for you all of a sudden to go, do you know what? Life belongs to me. It is mine. Because you haven't just, trickle fed into this. You've literally just made a decision in your head, in your mind, and you've gone, boom, you've absolutely almost made up for all the years that you might feel like that you've wasted. But before we get into that, you were born with a disability, weren't you?
I was born with my left lower arm missing. So I was born in 1981. Yeah, I'm 21. But my mum didn't have scan back in 1981. I believe that there were scans available, but my mum weren't someone that was scanned. So I were a surprise, if you like, in terms of being born with one arm. My mum was wonderful. I'm very accepting of that. But my dad rejected me. I weren't enough for dad. So I guess that is where really my, mental health and mindset has come from in terms of hiding my arm for so long.
You were born with, you're completely missing your left arm, right?
So just below elbow, you can probably see it. It's quite
just
cold.
Below
it's quite
the
cold
elbow.
In my house, so it's quite red, which it does go
just
red.
Just below the elbow.
Yeah, just below elbow.
I think this is really important because you're born, your father rejects you. Does he reject you because of the way you were born, or was it just was it something with your mum, or was it because how you came out with your arm missing?
Yeah, so I recently started motivational speaking last year. So there's context behind this. Last year I had to do a lot of digging emotionally and a lot of honest conversations with mum. So when what she told me, when I was age 12, 13, I asked her what happened with dad, because we saw dad on a Saturday and things like that, but I never felt comfortable. My gut were telling me there was something not right. I just weren't part of the fold like my sister were. And when I was born, there were a lot of commotion. I weren't put straight on mum's chest like my sister was 15 months previous. So she knew there was something wrong. She thought there was something wrong with my face. She didn't quite know why she thought that. But when they passed me to mum, and she was like, oh, she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her because there was nothing on my face. But then they unwrapped the blanket and showed mum my arm. And mum's response was, oh, is that all? and Dad
Yeah,
had to.
she's probably expecting the worst. I've had
Yeah,
5 children myself, and when your children get whisked off, you think the worst. So obviously, when you came back as a fully healthy baby,
yeah,
with just with your left arm missing below your elbow, of course she would have felt relief. She would have gone like that. She's
yeah,
healthy. She's here. There's nothing wrong with her head. There's no brain damage. It's a missing arm.
yeah. But my dad didn't react quite like that. He was screaming,
So how
crying.
did your dad react? And did he blame your mum for it?
I'm not sure if he blamed her. He just said she's no child of mine, like. And then he didn't return. He didn't return that day. And then he came next day and showed me to his mum and his sister. But the bond were never there. And I felt that as a child. I'm very big still on gut instinct.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing my motivational talk, and people say, "Well, why did your mum tell you that? That it's cruel that your mum told you." But I needed to know an answer because my gut were very much. I'd feel really uneasy, even when I'd go for birthdays and Christmas for presents. So my dad would pull up outside. I'd take my best friend with me because I just felt uneasy.
Did you feel like that he was ashamed of you? Obviously, the
Probably, yeah.
rejection was there from day dot, but
Yeah.
you didn't know that. So how would you feel? Just put me back into your mindset around your father. You said you felt uneasy. There was something wasn't right. Was it shame? Was there no sense of pride there? What did you feel? Because obviously, knowing what you know now is a lot different to how you felt when
Yeah.
you didn't know.
Yeah. I probably felt I weren't enough. And I have carried that through my entire life. And it's only until about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I've understood fully why, because I'm still unpicking, I'm still digging, I'm still trying to fully understand myself. And whilst yes, I have become a confident woman, I don't hide my arm anymore. I don't like it. If I had one wish, it would be to have 2 arms. And I know a lot of people said to me, "Well, you won't have all these opportunities, and I've got some gorgeous people around me." And I said, "Well, you won't be you, but I'd rather be me with 2 arms." And I said 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's because there was a lady, don't really want to give any credit. She is in media, and she put something on social media where she berated people like myself with limb difference, and it's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. But from that, it helped me dig a little bit further, and I thought, I know why I like really can't accept my arm, why I hate it so much, and it's because I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of myself, but it all ties back and links back. There's a lot of
Wow.
stigma attached to having a
Yeah, of
disability,
course.
and people don't. I think people still don't like to see or think that. Professional people, respectful people, they don't like to think that as a person with disability that you're not stared at multiple times a day. Of course I am. Every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're never gonna get away from that, are you?
No.
I suppose it's something that if it's on your conscience, then you will constantly see it. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to be looking for it, but it just you're just looking at people if they're looking at you. It's a self-conscious thing. I completely get it. So growing up, did you find yourself isolated? Did it affect your mental health? And what were you like as a child going through school? Were you bullied? Were you berated? How did that pan out? And were you sheltered at all by your parents? Because I suppose that's something that parents naturally do to their sibling. They want to shelter you. They want to but that's not necessarily the right thing to do.
No, probably quite the opposite really in school. I think you don't because you're not as self-aware in your adolescent brain. You're just not as self-aware until you become a
Hmm.
teenager. So in primary school, kids wanted to be my friend because I was different. I think back now, people wanted to, um, just be my friend and see if I could do a cartwheel and things like that. In senior school, I lived in a pub, so I weren't popular. I was like a mediocre kid. I weren't naughty.
Hmm.
But I weren't picked on. I think I can't even count on my hands the amount of time I was picked on, which is, it's wonderful, really. But my mum always said there's no such word as can't. So I didn't have any choice.
So it was your mum that installed that into you. Your dad was distant. Did he stay throughout your whole childhood? Was he absent? Because it sounds like that your mum was very much your champion.
Yeah, my mum's still is. But Dad, we went to see him on a Saturday, but that waned off. And I suspect as well some of that was because we were teenagers, wanted to go to town with his friends, but I hadn't seen him since probably I was 17, something like that.
How does that affect a teenage girl with how you were born, how you were obviously rejected by your father? What's going through your head at a young age when you don't realise that you see him for the last time?
In all honesty, I was probably more hurt for my sister, because my sister and my dad had, I'd say, a pretty normal sister-dad bond. But because of how I felt, I had probably more relief than anything.
Oh, really?
I'd say so, yeah, because when you don't feel something, or when your gut tells you something, you're walking on eggshells, aren't you? And that's a hard place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So to not have to do that. And I would have been described as a child as a worrier. Mental health weren't really a thing back then. It weren't discussed.
No, it wasn't discussed. It was hidden. If anyone had it's like, get on with it. There's something wrong with you, rather than actually, opening up and talking about it. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm an 80s kid as well. I was born in 1980, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think I controlled it through eating, or lack of eating, really from a very young age. So yeah, the food side of things was something that I could control. I'd say it was verging on anorexia. My best friend kind of caught me out and told my mum, and that got nipped in bud. But I was still very, very controlling with food. Probably again until very recently. I used to say I didn't enjoy food. I used to say, I find it boring. And if anyone knows me now, they'll know I eat a lot of food. And I'm probably the most balanced I've ever been. But only since probably like lockdown.
And do you think you've done that because that's the one thing that you could control, was your intake and outtake of food, and everything else around you? You probably just wanted to, to shut that door and to be left alone and to crack on with things, especially as you're going on into your teenage years now. You're starting to understand, the situation. You're starting to open up into the big wide world. How was that transition from going from that teenager, like you said, where no one really cared, everyone was cool about it, and then obviously your father being, off the scene, shall we say, and then you ultimately having to face, let's be honest, the big wide world, which is a completely different beast, isn't it? How was that transition, and did it work for you, or did it sounds like it worked against you?
Yeah, so when in my teenage years, that's when I started covering my arm.
Right, so up to then, you were quite happy with your arm being out, and you weren't ashamed of it. And then was there a moment, Louise, that happened, or did that just gradually happen where you just became more and more ashamed of your arm?
I think it was when I'd asked my mum what had happened with Dad, and then I didn't realise that I'd started covering it. I was okay if I were with friends. I wouldn't cover it then because I suppose I felt protected. But if I went anywhere on my own, I'd have certain things that I'd need. So a coat or something to cover my arm. A little bit of food, because don't forget I didn't eat. So I used to faint quite a bit. And if I needed them things before I left the house. And I covered my arm since then. And if I looked in the mirror, I'd put my arm behind my back. So I didn't actually see myself as somebody with a disability until I did my first CrossFit competition.
Do you wish that your mother never told you that your father sort of rejected you? Do you think? And again, I know hindsight's a great thing, but it seems like that really, really affected you from thereafter, and it seems like that you went into this spiral of self doubt and mental health issues thereafter. Do you wish that your mother would have just stayed stum?
No, I don't, because then my mindset would have been affected in other ways, because I knew there was something not right.
So it's almost confirmation for you.
Yeah. And I feel like that's gave me a different power or a different lens on life. I'm very good at reading people. It's part of my job now. And if I didn't have known that, I would have always had that doubt that your gut instinct's not right. And that's really important to me. So I feel like it needed to happen in order for me to settle my mind in that sense. I've not put two and two together until I started doing my talk, started writing that. And it sounds really bizarre from an outsider looking in, but I've just not pieced everything together. And I think because we live such a busy life, I've pieced bits together in lockdown, and lockdown will always be, or have been, my saviour, because it gave me some quiet time to think. But no, I absolutely think she did the right thing in telling me.
How did it affect your relationships moving forward? Was it quite easy for you to date? You're a very good-looking lady, you know. I'm sure that you'd have no problem. But ultimately, we don't know what's going on in someone's head. How did that affect your relationships from that moment onwards?
Well, I think again, because I'm an 80s child, world weren't open to us like it is now. We didn't see things like we saw things then. So I had a group of friends. I was brought up in a pub, and I met Lee, and we were together from being 19. So it weren't a thing. Like I say, I didn't see myself as somebody as having a disability. And I know now, me being present on social media, I do speak with a lot of people with indifference, and they do ask me about dating and all them things, and I'm in a different situation now, but it was just a completely different world. And I think unless you were born in 80s or before then, it's really hard to comprehend that. But you kind of, you had your circle, and unless you were rich, you didn't go further from your village, really. I don't feel.
So
I mean,
true.
that might just be a me thing, but...
So no, and also you didn't have the opportunities or the aspirations or I suppose the opportunities to be able to do that. It was very much you couldn't see beyond the community, you couldn't see beyond beyond your town, and that was very much an 80s sort of aspect of life where you're just going through it and you're like, do you know what, this is me, this is my backyard, this is where I'm going to function, this is where I'm going to work, and this is where I'm going to live for the rest of my life. You never imagine that you're going to go out into the big wide world and now speak in front of thousands of people, compete with hundreds of people with what you do. So when did that actually come about? When did you actually start to find a bit of a community sort of space in like the physical aspect of things?
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble conceiving Maya, my eldest. So I had recurrent miscarriage, and I found that really tough. And when I had Maya, I was, initially I was told I was infertile. Weren't happy with that, so I did a lot of research, and eventually I'd be diagnosed with Hughes syndrome, so I would have never kept any of the children that I had before. So when I had Maya, I was just in an absolute gorgeous bubble of maternal bliss, really. I couldn't believe I got her. I've just, still, I still go and look at them when they're in bed. I think, oh God, I can't believe they're mine. And then I had Lilia. They're 2 years, 2 weeks apart, but I had Lilia in the car.
Bloody hell, Louise, you don't do things by halves, do you?
I know.
You're just a glutton for punishment. I swear you are. You're like me. It's just like things are like, yeah, do you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah.
So tell me about this car birth and who were you with?
Well, I did go to hospital. So both my girls came on the due date, which I've heard is very lucky. And I knew I were in labour with Lilia because I'd already had Maya. So I did go to hospital and I presented because I'm a high risk pregnancy. I had to inject every day with blood thinners. So I were at risk of bleeding out. And they said, no, you're not in labour. Sent me home. I got to the front door and I couldn't move. It was middle at night. So you've had 5 children yourself, you'll know the noise that a lady makes when they're in labour. And I woke the
Oh
entire
yes,
street
I
up.
do.
Yeah, we're a bit loud, aren't we? But yeah, I walked the street up. 2 neighbours came out and posted me into the back of the car. And I had Lilia 6 minutes later at 120 mile an hour at a local roundabout. And I can laugh about it now, but it's the most horrendous pain I have ever felt. And I still compare pain to that day. Nothing compares. But what it did bring, it gave me PTSD. And I already had mental health issues.
So let's Louise, let's rewind. So you and I love how you just modestly just skip past giving birth in a car with no pain relief. This is where women are hardcore.
Yes, we are.
Listen, it's and I can't skip past this. For the sake of all the mums out there and all the women out there, you're in the car and. Have you got your feet up on the dashboard and you do you hold the baby? How?
No, so the neighbours posted me into the back seat. Luckily, we had an estate car, so it was pretty big.
Yeah.
And my clothes were already hung up, for the next day.
Yeah, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, so I'm laid out on back seat. And of course, I had leggings on. Of course, I would. Why wouldn't I? I gave birth to and my husband were on phone to midwives. And I remember him saying, tell her to stop pushing, and I'll not even repeat what I said. But so hospital were about 2 minutes after me giving birth, if that. My husband were driving it. It were 120 mile an hour, and we could go that fast because it was middle at night. But I had to get to hospital because of the bleeding out, and the staff were waiting outside hospital doors to bring me in. I mean, at this point, I didn't know what I had, boy, girl. I weren't sure. They just cut my leggings open, passed me to Lilia. She was wrapped up, and they wheeled me into hospital. And because it was a weekend night and it had been boiling, it's got a massive round of applause because they'd just seen me. They'd seen me half hour before go in. And I knew quite a lot of people there. And they were like, what are you doing back? And I've just got this baby.
I bet you wanted to kill them, didn't you? Like that. I told you I was going into labour. I told you. So just a quick one. You say you had your leggings on. So when you gave birth, was the baby in the leggings when you gave birth? So the baby was all tucked up in the leggings. They cut the leggings open, grabbed the baby. What? You know what?
I know they put Lilia on my little arm and they said, you're going to have to hold umbilical cord. So that's how I was wheeled into hospital, holding umbilical cord. And this baby, I still didn't know what I'd had, boy or girl. I mean, I'd had 13 scans with both of them just because I was high risk and because of the risk of miscarriage. But I never bothered with knowing what I were having because it weren't important. You get what you're given, and I was just pleased to be pregnant and have that opportunity to be a mum.
Wow. And did you not think after that, do you know what? There's something different about me. There's something special about me. There's something strong about me. There's something, did that give you a sense of confidence? Because to go through something like that and to come out the other end with a beautiful child, and if you think at life in a positive way, that builds resilience, that builds strength. You realize what you're capable of. Was there any sort of positive sort of traits that you realized that were thereafter, or did you just go back into mum mode?
I would say that my mental health took a massive hit then. It
Right.
smashed me to pieces. They said I had PTSD at that point. And I had Maya, who was 2 at the time. Lilia wasn't a well baby, as in I had to force feed her. She was sick quite a lot. I had to wind her a lot, so then I got carpal tunnel in my wrist. So I was struggling in that sense. My husband worked away. I couldn't bath girls, so I had to have help with that. And then Maya started stammering. So there were a lot going off at the time. And I think from outside point of view, I cope very well. I've got very used to putting a mask on. But I really struggled at that point. And this is what then ultimately, after time, took me into sport, because something had to give for me, because I was like this then for a good 3 years. I stopped living. I was scared of life.
Wow.
This
So
is
you're
where,
so overstimulated, you're so overwhelmed.
mm,
You're almost, when you're in that sort of state of mind, and probably from the outside world, which you mentioned, it looked like that you were okay, but you're almost on autopilot. When did you realize that, you needed help, or that you were now, because you get to a stage where you start to suffer so much that, it's almost not impossible, but because you do it, because you find a way to do it, but it almost, that will have a knock-on effect with your children, a knock-on effect with your family, and once it starts to affect them,
mm,
you start to go, right, I actually need to, I need help before I spiral out of control and I bring the rest of the family down with me.
yeah, and it was at that point, and I call it cruel moments. So I got to a point, probably maybe it's a year more than that each morning I'd wake up, and when I call it cruel moments, what I mean is in that split second, you're not sure where you are, what day it is, what world's doing, and you think, oh, everything's fine, and then that's when I'd have a panic attack, and the panic attacks would be horrendous. I didn't know it were a panic attack because, again, mental health still weren't
What were they
as
like? What were they like, Louise, when these panic attacks would kick in at any random time? What did they feel like?
like I was dying,
Oh,
just like
really?
yeah, just like I couldn't breathe. But then I'd go again. I describe it as being quite manic, like quite rocky, quite seeking that reassurance, because it would be, to say things out loud
With
when
who?
you're,
With who though, Louise? Seeking reassurance for yourself? Seeking reassurance from your husband,
yeah,
or who were you seeking reassurance with?
and anybody that would reassure me. It'd go, so the
Wow.
cycle would be that each morning I'd have a panic attack, and it'd generally be over something that, again, health wise. So, say I'd find a mark on my body or a lump or whatever, I'd start by a panic attack, and then I'd Google, which is very common for people with health anxiety. I'd Google to a point where it said I was going to die, and then I'd need to go to doctors. Then they'd tell me that, everything was fine, and then the cycle would start again, but with something different.
So basically, you were trying to self-diagnose, and then which is always always the worst thing to do, even though you got your gut instinct, but you go into this rabbit hole.
Yeah, but I think as well, because of the miscarriages. So when I miscarried, I'd know the day that I'd miscarried, because you know your own body. You can feel things. So when I'd ring up and I'd say, I think I miscarried, they said, no, you've got to wait for your 20-week scan now. So we'd go and we'd pay for a private scan, which at time there weren't scans near us. So we'd drive an hour, pay to be told, yeah, baby died last night. I go, well, I know. So I'd lost trust. So in my head, why would I be wrong? Because I were right them
No, that makes
times.
complete sense.
Why would I be wrong? Because I turned up to hospital and I told them I were in labour. They told me I weren't. So I'd lost trust with health services.
Yeah, with everything. So you were just, you're just like, the only person I can rely on ultimately is myself. But when you're spiraling, like you are, which you probably didn't realize you were doing, you can become your own worst enemy in these situations. And that sounds like it. What was the straw that broke the camel's back? When did you realize, potentially if I don't get help, then I'm not going to be here anymore?
Yeah, well, it was my husband. He said enough's enough, because I had the stigma that were attached to meds for mental health. I'd been like, no, I can't go on them because I'll never come off them, because that's what people say. But it was like, no, enough's enough now. Went to doctors and I started on a low dose citalopram. And I remember the 14th day taking citalopram, and it was just, I was sat on my laptop and I was looking at some clothes. I remember my husband walking downstairs through an open staircase, and he went, oh God, she's back. Because I love clothes, I love fashion, I love all that. But for 3-4 years, I'd just lost myself. I didn't do anything. I didn't put any makeup on. I didn't go out. I didn't see friends. I was even scared at sun. I was scared to death at sun, because in case it gave me cancer. That's the point I got to. So, yeah, after taking meds for a couple of weeks, it settled me down. And then I was on and off, because I kept trying to come off them, again, because it's stigma. And I went to see a specialist over something different to do with health anxiety, and she just sat me down and she just said, look, take them meds. I want you to take it, put it in your drawer, forget about it for 12 months. And then after 12 months, reassess. And that's what I did. And in that time, I started at CrossFit.
Why did you start CrossFit? How did that sort of idea ping into your mind? When did that become become at the forefront of your mindset, and what ignited that?
So I'd started like a kettlebells class, and I enjoyed that. And then I went for PT, and a local CrossFit box opened, and I had to do something for myself. I had to. At this point, Lilia, my youngest, was about 4, I think. And I just recognised that something had to give. I couldn't just continue to survive. And I'm not quite sure why I chose CrossFit, because it is so hard, isn't it? But I do remember.
Especially with one arm.
Yeah, I remember walking in and thinking, I'd never even been to a weights section or a gym. Never.
You went straight into the deep end.
Yeah. But that's where, and I recognise now that's exactly where I need to be. But yeah. So I didn't use any barbells at the time when I first went. I used kettlebells. But I were welcomed into that community, and I just loved it instantly.
When it comes to PT, when it comes to going to the gym, that gym community, whatever it may be, whatever discipline you may be doing in the gym, whether it's bodybuilding, CrossFit, high rock, whatever it may be, I always say to people, do not ever underestimate the importance of a gym community.
No.
This is men, women, partners, getting out and putting their health, their mindset and their emotions into a community, into a location, and into people that ultimately can better you as an individual. Therefore, bettering you will take that home to your family life. You will better, that will rub off on your family members, rub off on your children. I think it's the single most important community outside your immediate family.
Yeah.
Because it is so important, and it's so important to get it right. Don't just go with the first gym or the first, just you'll find that circle. You're, like you just said there, which put a smile on my face. You went, they just welcomed me with open arms. They were there. It just felt, when it feels right, it feels good.
Yeah, some of my best friends, the people that I met on that first day, going into that gym, and knew what would unfold from that. Knew that now I've got my own strap, that I sell across the world, and it allows other people like me to be able to lift and do pull-ups. And if somebody had told me that at the time, I would have never believed them. But it weren't done just from me; it was the community. When I did start lifting, it was one of my good friends, Gaz, fire officer. He cut some straps out at fire engine seat belts. He says, "Right, Lou, we're gonna give these a go, wrap them around barbell and do all that." But by very nature of them, they couldn't lift a lot of weight, so they kept growing, and my arm were black with bruising. So one of the other members, he were a plumber, so he made like a padded thing to put on barbell, and that's how we worked with that for a while.
The plumber, the fireman. Do you know what? This is what community is all about.
Yeah.
This is just the epitome of community. Just being there for each other, figuring things out. Trial and error. But just being there and coming up with different scenarios for different solutions and different problem solving. Did it teach you or make you realise first and foremost that you had a disability? But also teach you to accept it. It sounds like this journey or this CrossFit journey had such a positive effect on what I call the trilogy: the physical, the psychological, and the emotional aspects of who we are. And you said you didn't realize you had a disability until CrossFit, but did it teach you to accept that you had a disability and no matter what, you were just going to push on?
Yeah, it did. And initially, I didn't accept, to my detriment, so I ended up very injured because I wanted to do everything exactly the same as everybody else, and that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
I entered a competition, and I remember photos coming back. I was so naive. I didn't know. I'd never been to a competition. I didn't know there were going to be videographers there and people taking photos and stuff. So when I seen this photo, it was like somebody had just punched me in the face, because it were me with my arm out, and I'd staged all my photos before that. So I had any photos took. So when I saw that, I went, I was mortified that that's what I looked like, because I've not seen myself like that. So that's where the journey of acceptance started.
Have you fully accepted it?
Yeah, I like to say I've accepted it, but I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on that.
But then these photos that come out, do you not just does it not give you that sort of other edge of things where you just think to yourself, God, there's very few of me that's courageous enough and brave enough to accept who I am and to get up in front and to compete in front of hundreds of people, knowing that the CrossFit industry is so big, huge, that one video goes to, the 100,000 people that someone's following, that goes to the 2 million people that someone's following, that it would do the rounds, and you would represent the sport in such a proud manner where people go, look, if Louise can do it and she's up there competing with the best, then it sort of opens up the floodgates to all the people that had the same mindset as you, as I'm not good enough, I can't do this, therefore I won't. And they don't commit in life. They stay stagnant and they live life on autopilot.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really, really trying. And actually, I've got a motivational talk in a week of Sunday, and I've committed to myself, and I've made the promise to myself. I've put it on social media, so I can't get out of it, that I will be wearing a dress and my arm will be out, because I've covered my arm on all my other ones. And that's been done intentionally, because I know that when any photos or videos come back, I'll hate it. But it's really important for me as well to be honest, because from my honesty, from me saying I don't like my arm, I know why, I know there's a lot of shame, stigma attached to it. There's also hundreds of and thousands of other people that feel the same, but don't feel like they can say that, because that's not what we say. What we should say is, yeah, I love it. It makes me different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like that. So it's really important to me, and it has opened some wonderful conversations with people that are like me. I had a lady message yesterday, and she uncovered her arm for the first time in a gym space. And that she's similar age to me.
Yeah, that's probably because of you. You are definitely leading the way. Now, whether you like it or not, you are in that position now of inspiration, of motivation, of aspiration, where, even if you affect one person, which you haven't, you've affected, I've seen it, thousands of people since, that video went viral of yourself talking about my book, The Fear Bubble. It's just like, wow, you've just blown the casket off, and you've gone from, I'm not going to say from you were never not a hero, but you've gone from like zero to hero in tens of thousands of people's minds. So, is that something that you realize that you do, or is it something that you still struggle with?
No, I think so. As you just mentioned, the book, The Fear Bubble, and as I talk about on my motivational talk, it is the book that saved my life. So thank you for that.
So take me back to when you got the fear. How did that come across your desk as such? Where did that come about?
So I were at a weightlifting class, and I think you know the guy. I know you've worked with him, Ben Kears. He worked for Nike.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So Ben saw one of my videos and reached out and asked me to see if I'd do a shoot for Nike. Initially,
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, no, I can't do that." Because I didn't want to speak because I was still really anxious, really shy. And they were like, "No,
Yeah.
come down." So I went down, and that's the first like kind of big thing that I'd done, even going to London. So I went down, and I was absolutely scared to death, but it would still be one of the best days of my life. Because from that day, I just thought I'd always wanted to do something in sport. I was good at sport at school. But I thought, if Nike believe in me, then I've got to believe in myself. So I signed up for a PT course on the Monday when I got back. But that's when I stopped going to my CrossFit box. A couple of months after that, the relationship with my coach went wayward, and I left CrossFit in the December. I went to Nike in April, left CrossFit in December, and I had a breakdown. And I think that was because I was leaving a community that, in my mind, had helped to fix my mental health, and the community aspect of things for me were massive. I felt like I was leaving a family, and I was devastated. And yeah, I had a breakdown. So I'd ordered Fear Bubble just, I suppose, to help with my mindset. But one of the days I was bad. Like, it was my worst day, and that day I was going to kill myself. I'd planned it, like I said. I'd rang my friend up, and I'd asked her to get girls bits for their birthdays and Christmas because I knew the dad would get them a big present. But I wanted them to have all the little bits because that's what's special to little girls, I think. And she said, "What are you on about?" I said, "No, just let me know that you'll get the bits." And I'd been out and I got the cards, and I'd wrote all the cards for when they were older. And I were in my dining room, and I were rocking like quite manically. And I just think I didn't get it. I didn't get point to life. There was just no point. I'd be better off without me because I'm just a pain. And I'd ordered the Fear Bubble on top of my settee on back, and I don't know why I just stopped rocking, and I went and picked it up, and it was the part where you talk about the corridor. In the top of that corridor, and you've got to open them doors, and through them doors is fear. And then once you conquer that fear, you've got to go through again, and then there'll be some more fear and more fear. And I live and breathe that still. Every year I say
A series of commitments. That's all it is. You're never going to get to the destination. It's just opening up that door. That's a commitment. You're there. Bang. You bank it. You learn from it. You grow from it, and then you take that deep breath again, and you commit again to the next door. That door might lead to a corridor with multiple doors. You never know the opportunities it's gonna, and that all comes from committing to fear, committing to your fears, and it's a process that I always go through. And it's my favourite book that I've read because it's so emotional. It conquers emotional intelligence, and it makes you understand it and go through your own process. And to hear that and to see it in action, especially from your story, and for you to actually put it into practice and realize that it works, right? The fear
Yeah.
bubble is it works, right?
Like every year I said to myself, I'm going to do something that really scares me, because if not, I'm not growing.
Yeah.
So I need to find something else actually this year, because I did my first motivational speech in January, and this time last year, I would have never thought I'd dare do anything like that. And it was amazing. I loved it.
Was there just a switch in your mind?
Yeah, because I thought to myself as well at that time, I've got nothing to show. Like if I died, when I thought, what am I going to be remembered by? What?
Mm-hmm.
So the only person that could change that would be myself. I wanted to leave a lasting legacy, and I wanted to leave something in people and not for people. So what I can do is inspire people. I can motivate people. I'm very good at reading people, so I can help them in that sense. So that's kind of been my mission, really.
Do you know what, Louise? I love what you just said there, and I've got to repeat it. I want to leave something in people,
Yeah.
not for people. That is a powerful statement that's just rung true to me, because I always say to people, all I want to do is leave the best version of myself. So you can use that to become a better version of who you are. And it's really good that you are thinking like that, because ultimately then your whole journey, your whole purpose of what you're doing now, it has a purpose. And that's all we can do is leave behind, something to put into people. I love that, Louise. Wow, that's amazing.
I certainly think I definitely have something on my gravestone now. But I do make a lot of decisions that I make.
There you go. There's your quote on your gravestone.
Yeah.
So, Louise, you have this mindset switch, and you start to believe in yourself again, don't you?
Yeah, and it's almost like I've had it on like two separate occasions, as though I've got a switch on my back and somebody switched it, and then I'm just able to feel something different. I remember being at, I don't know if you know of WIT, it's in London, whatever it takes.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah, so again, I've got a lot to thank them guys for. They're still championing me to this day. Does Dan. Dan Williams is a great guy. But I was at one of their events, and I remember going downstairs and speaking to Dan and saying, I feel like for the first time I've spread my different wings and I feel like I'm flying. It was such a wonderful feeling to think, and it was a switch that I weren't bothered what people thought anymore, because I was so bothered by what people thought.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that switch was a wonderful switch.
I very much see the switch, the switched on sort of Louise Hawkins, and I'm not saying that we don't have our bad moments, because we do, absolutely. And these moments, you actually need to take a step back. You need to experience the darkness to see the light, as long as it's just in that moment, and you can come out of it very quick. But I see this strong, sort of independent and confident lady. What you're doing ultimately is you've sort of bounced onto the scene as now this inspirational figure. What does it feel like to be Louise Hawkins, the inspiration, the lady that shows the world that nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it? Because that's you. That's you.
Thank you. And it feels like hard to accept that still, but it feels surreal. I feel like I'm living someone else's life for a little while, but it just keeps growing. So yeah, it feels surreal, but it feels exciting, and it feels
Good.
all kinds of wonderful. Yeah.
Well, you should be excited, Louise, because I was super excited to have you on. Had such a great conversation. And again, I see you heading for the stars, nowhere else. How important is it to commit to your fears?
It's brought me everything that I've got and that I am today. And I think understanding why for me was a big thing. Understanding why I do what I do, why I act or acted as I did, and understanding that, because everybody wants to know, how do you get confident? It's understanding that confidence is not a feeling, it comes from action. And we can all share quotes until we're blue in the face, but if we don't action them, then we'll still be in exactly the same position as we were the year before and previous year. So when I share a quote, it's because there's something in there that I truly believe. And if I've not actioned it before, I will action it, even though it'll probably hurt my tummy and I'll still be scared to death, but I'm going to do it anyway, because through doing things anyway, through fear, that's what's brought me confidence.
Love it, Louise. And one final question. What is next for Louise Hawkins?
Like I said, motivational speaking, just started that, and then just started a new company, which is called SLE 123, and that's looking at neuroscience, brain-body connection, and helping people to realise and recognise that the life can be much better if we're in a calmer bodily state, and looking at his nervous system. So it's just everything that I've done in terms of resetting myself in order to be able to do what I do now, and wanting to take that into schools and education providers and corporate, just because we live in such a noisy, dysregulated world, and a calmer world with few more pauses would be, much happier space to live in for us all.
Louise, from a southerner to a northerner, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved talking with you, and I will continue to follow your journey with a hawk eye, which I do anyway. Thank you ever so much for coming on. Much love and positivity. Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You can find more from Louise Hawkins on her Instagram page. I'll put the details in the show notes. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. I'm Ant Middleton. Catch you next time.